I reside with my parents in a rather small house where all the bedrooms are located on the same floor. Consequently, smoking weed can be challenging. To avoid any trouble, I usually head to a nearby nature preserve accessible via a half-mile dirt road that leads to a small parking lot. Although the spot is quite popular during the day, it offers me a secluded area to smoke. One summer Friday night, with no plans for the next day, I decided to head over to the preserve for a smoke session. As I drove down the dirt road at around 7:30 p.m., a white SUV pulled in behind me, but I didn't think much of it. Once I parked in the far corner of the lot, I lit up and spent an hour on my phone. As the sun set, the area turned pitch black since there were no streetlights, and my heavily tinted windows made it even darker. As I looked out of the window, the light from my phone screen reflected off the glass and obstructed my view of the outside. I decided to switch off my phone and survey my surroundings. As I looked around, I couldn't help but notice a white SUV parked nearby, which was unusual, as I had never seen any cars there after dark. I assumed that the occupants were engaged in the same activity as I was, although I couldn't see any light emanating from inside their vehicle. It was odd, as I expected to see at least a phone screen. However, the SUV was completely dark, and I couldn't see if anyone was inside. Despite feeling slightly paranoid due to being high, I tried to shrug off the strange occurrence and continued watching my YouTube videos. Suddenly, I heard what sounded like footsteps on rocks outside my car. I quickly turned off my phone and strained my eyes to look out of the dark-tinted window. I pressed my face against the glass, but it was as if I was staring at a solid wall. That's when I noticed a person standing by my car door, attempting to peer inside. I let out a scream as they began to bang on my window with their fists, causing me to panic even more. Luckily, I had left my keys in the ignition and was able to start my car and drive off immediately. As I sped away, my headlights illuminated 3 figures sprinting back towards the white SUV. I didn't hesitate for a second and floored it down the bumpy dirt road, not caring about the rough terrain. I could see the SUV's headlights approaching quickly in my rearview mirror. However, by the time I had returned to the main road, I had managed to escape and get away. Since then, I've avoided going back to that parking lot at night, and I have not seen that white SUV again. This incident occurred last Christmas season when my family had just moved from the city to the suburbs, which was a much bigger change than I had anticipated. In the suburbs, everything was much more spread out, and we had to drive most places, which was a significant adjustment for me since I was used to walking or biking everywhere. This also meant that I had to buy my own car, which was exciting, and I ended up getting a small single-cab Ford Ranger. During the Christmas season, most of the people in our neighborhood who celebrated Christmas would get real trees. In the city, however, most people I knew would have fake trees since there were limited places to get real ones. Therefore, my family decided to get a real tree from a tree farm located not too far from our house. My parents sent me to pick one up the day after Thanksgiving, and the entrance to the farm was off a side street with no houses for a few hundred feet. There was a hand-painted sign advertising their trees nailed to a log, and beyond that was a narrow dirt path that looked like it could barely fit 2 cars across. It took me nearly 10 minutes to reach the farm, which was filled with rows of Christmas trees that were still in the ground and looked overgrown. As I parked my truck, the owner of the farm came out of a small shed with a friendly grin on his face and welcomed me. However, when I went to shake his hand, he asked me if I had come by myself. Confused, I said yes, and he then asked me what size tree I was looking for. Since my parents had not given me any information on what size to get, I pulled out my phone to call them. However, the owner looked at me as if I had just tried to steal his wallet, and he appeared angry. I forgot what had been said on the phone, but upon hanging up, I informed the man of the tree I desired. He responded with a grunt and led me to a row of trees, his friendly demeanor replaced with a cold and hostile one. Although his behavior did not worry me, I did notice the change. Eventually, I chose a tree and he marked it with orange tape. We returned to the shed for payment and to retrieve his chainsaw. He then informed me that the tree cost $200, which was more than I had expected to pay. With only $50 on me, he became even more irate. I was annoyed by this, as I felt his prices were exorbitant. But since this was the only tree farm in my area, and I desired a real tree, I decided to go to an ATM for more money. However, as I turned to leave, the man lunged for my arm, causing me to pull away and become startled. He apologized and allowed me to take my time to get the money. I left in my truck feeling uneasy about the encounter and decided not to return to that tree farm again. However, my unease only intensified when I saw the man on an ATV following me a few minutes later. Despite my attempts to speed away, he kept up with me, and I realized he had something in his hand, causing me to fear for my safety. As he pulled out a handgun while we were going approximately 50 miles an hour, I knew that my little truck couldn't go any faster on the terrain. Instead of accelerating, I hit the brakes hard, causing his ATV to collide with the back of my truck, and he was catapulted over his handlebars, landing face first on the ground. He didn't stir, and his ATV was in ruins. Even though he had just tried to shoot me, I felt a twinge of guilt and raced away, fearing that I had harmed him severely. However, I couldn't shake off the feeling of concern and called the police after driving a few miles and explaining the situation as best as I could. After calming down, I decided to return to the site to meet the authorities and ensure that he was okay. Against my better judgment, I drove back down the dirt road after seeing the flashing lights of police cars and ambulances through the woods. Upon arrival, I found the man had been loaded into an ambulance and was lucky to have a pulse. The police questioned me about the incident, and I was able to provide a clearer explanation. I even inquired about potential criminal charges, but the cop assured me my actions were clearly an act of self-defense, and even offered the option to press charges myself. However, I decided against pursuing legal action and made a mental note to avoid the tree farm where the incident occurred. Since then, I have heard rumors that the man was on prescription medication for schizophrenia, but had stopped taking it, which could explain his behavior. The last I heard, he was still in a coma. As for me, my family ended up getting a fake Christmas tree, and I had an otherwise enjoyable holiday season. However, I now know to steer clear of that particular tree farm in the future. On a different note, during our road trip to California, my brother and I were exploring the desert trails when we realized we needed to refuel. We had meticulously planned our route, noting the gas stations and restaurants along the way. However, when we reached the first gas station, it was clear that it had been abandoned for years. I was frustrated with my brother for not checking beforehand, but our immediate concern was getting enough gas to make it back to our RV. We consulted our map and found a gas station closer to us than our RV, so we set off in that direction. Unfortunately, after a few miles, my brother's bike ran out of fuel, and we were stranded in the middle of the desert with no phone signal and no cars in sight. We waited for hours for someone to come by, but only one car drove past without stopping. According to our map, the nearest restaurant was about 10 miles away, so we made the decision to walk there, leaving our bikes behind. As we walked, a truck approached us, and the driver, an older man with a rough beard, asked if we were lost. We explained our situation, but the man seemed skeptical and told us we were on his private property. He didn't offer us a ride or any assistance and instead made it clear that he didn't tolerate trespassers. We expressed regret and explained that we were unaware that the property belonged to the person whose gas we had taken. We stated that we needed fuel and promised to turn around. The individual contemplated for a moment and then offered to assist us by getting some gas cans. We expressed our gratitude and were instructed to wait by our bikes while he fetched them. Although I was a bit uneasy, my brother and I still climbed into the back of his truck. However, we soon noticed that the vehicle was filled with empty shotgun shells and various bullet casings, which made us feel uneasy. After a short while, he dropped us off and informed us that he would return with gas in approximately an hour, advising us not to move. As he departed, my brother expressed mistrust towards the individual. Regrettably, we were stranded and had no other options. We waited for roughly 20 minutes until a blue sedan drove up and inquired about our situation. We informed the driver that we were out of gas and waiting for the person in the red truck to return with some for us. Upon hearing this, the driver's amicable demeanor swiftly vanished from his face. He cautioned us that the dirt road led to a small area with some houses, and that the individual in the red truck was his neighbor with serious mental health problems. The driver stated that the police were often at the individual's home, and that he had been incarcerated on various assault charges, and even had been caught for kidnapping. He further asserted that he did not believe we had good intentions, and advised us to join him in his car, so he could take us to get some gas for our bikes. I felt considerably more comfortable with the driver, and we climbed into his car. Upon returning to the trail, We observed the red truck pulled over, and the individual was scouring the area around our bikes. As soon as he noticed the car pulling up, he scrambled into his truck and sped away. This confirmed our suspicion that he had no intention of providing us with gas, which was disheartening. However, we were grateful that he had left, and we thanked the driver profusely for potentially saving our lives. We replenished our fuel and headed back to our RV. I insisted that the driver accept a $100 bill as a token of our appreciation. That was the end of the incident, and we didn't allow it to spoil our trip. The following day, we made sure to only visit gas stations that were open. The rest of our journey was uneventful and went smoothly, with no further incidents occurring.